New coach, same old Bears. It's CHGO Bears After Dark with my guy, Corey Wootton. Adam Rank coming up here in a minute. Let's get this party started. Welcome back to CHGO Bears After Dark, presented by our guys over at ComEd. ComEd always helping us keep the lights on here on CHGO Bears After Dark. Make sure you hit up ComEd.com/biz for all your energy needs. I'm your host, Greg Bragg Jr. I'm back out in the garage. We're firing the stogie up here tonight. Mr. Corey Wootton, how we doing?
I'm doing okay. After yesterday's loss, it was a little tough, but I'm looking forward to getting through our therapy session. Here at After Dark, with everybody tuning in. I think it would be very therapeutic tonight. I can tell you that.
That's right. Well, hey, the therapy already started earlier today. It's like 55 degrees out here in Northwest Indiana, the region as we call it. So I was able to get 18 holes of golf in. Then I went to the gym as per Corey's mandate. So I think I'm like 14 of 15 days in a row since Corey lit a fire under my ass. Like the Bears need a fire lit under their ass.
Yep. So I'm proud of you though, Braggs. For a while you were into it. You get very hot and cold about things, and I just hope the fitness journey is something that you do forever and you encompass it in your daily life, right? You get your cardio, you get your lifting. Maybe do biceps every day, and then maybe you'll have biceps like me. Maybe.
Yeah.
But no, man, I'm proud of you and making the effort. And I think sometimes friends need to push each other, and that's what I try to do. I know that one day you were mad at the world, or the Bears are playing bad. You think I'm picking on you, but I really want you to be the best version of yourself, my man.
Well, you are always picking on me, but that's okay because I know that's your love language. And so our love language here is to pick on the Bears because they need it. They need a lot of picking on here for sure. Adam Rank's going to be joining us here in just a little bit, and we'll get into it. Joey Christopoulos is with us, as he always is, behind the scenes, working here as the hearty producer here of this fine program here tonight. How we doing, Joey?
What's that line that DiCaprio says in Titanic? I got air in my lungs. Last night I was sleeping underneath the bridge, but here I am on CHGO After Dark with you fine people, and I'm here to make every day count because this is all we've got. This is where we're at. Let the therapy session begin. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you joining us as always. So let's get into it, man. I mean, now that the dust has settled, Corey, sometimes when we're instantly reacting to a game on a post-game show, sometimes there's some things that can slip by you. I certainly have some thoughts on things that I didn't address that now that I kind of take a step back and look at that I'd like to bring up. But is there anything for you that stood out in that game that maybe we didn't cover last night?
I think we covered everything that I could think of. I just think the most disappointing part of that game is just how flat they came out. And you were talking about it in the pregame, how they can't lay an egg, especially in the situation. The locker room didn't rally behind Matt Eberflus, right? He lost that locker room.
Right.
And they were talking about Thomas Brown and how they get him excited and they're reinvigorated and ready to go. And then all of a sudden they get out there and it looked like a worse team. It looked like we should have had Matt Eberflus back there.
Yeah.
So I just didn't understand how they came out so flat, and especially like the offense has been up and down all year, right? The past couple of weeks has been pretty good in the second half, but for the most part, the offense has been up and down. The defense has been pretty good for the most part for most of the year, even through the bad parts with Eberflus. That's the most disappointing thing because they didn't have Trent Williams, right? Brandon Ayuk is out on IR. Christian McCaffrey's banged up as well. Mason, you had your third stringer. I know he's a talented guy. He's fast, but literally they did whatever they wanted to do. Simple crossing routes, simple run games, couldn't fit it up. Guys were making business decisions. Like we talk about monsters of the midway and the defense. And as a defensive player, that was just terrible to see. So for me, I think my biggest disappointment was the defense and just how they didn't come out to play at all.
Joey, we haven't had a chance to hear your reaction from the game. Obviously, this has been a tough one for the fan base. Everybody was on the firing line last night, including yours truly, the Meatball. I asked today if anybody was ready to apologize for all the mean things that were tweeted at me, but I don't know if Twitter's ready to apologize yet, and that's okay. I understand this is, the time to air it all out. And so for you as a fan, what is there anything you want to air out here?
Well, Bragsman, I the phrase from yesterday's post-game show that I keep coming back to that you said over and over again is about how from top to bottom, this organization is poisoned. We can talk ownership, we can talk coaching staff, and unfortunately now that rot has now infiltrated into the football team with players on the field that, look, I think we can go back and forth on did they walk into the season with enough depth. I'll be the first to tell you that I've been saying all summer long I did not like the offensive line makeup of this team. But I do think there are some talented players on this team that are now being infected by the unfortunate Chicago Bears way that we've been experiencing now. Now for the better part of maybe almost a decade outside of 2018. This has been going on for a long time. And Corey, man, if I can throw this back to you really quick, because I'd love your perspective on this, where as a fan, I woke up this morning and I was thinking to myself, our perfect preseason aside, time machine, if we can go back to those beautiful times. But if you go back, Corey, go back to week 1 of this season, and this Bears defense was a turnover machine. They literally won the game for us in week 1. You go through the first 7 weeks of the season, they don't allow 20 points.
Right.
There's talent on this defensive side of the ball, and just to see the devolution, if you will, of this defense up into what we saw yesterday, I think that's what Bears fans are having a hard time wrapping their head around. And I know we want to kick a bunch of players off the team, but can you talk a little bit about these are the same human beings that in week 1 put this team on its shoulders and brought us back from the jaws of defeat against Tennessee. This is the same team that played so well for those first six or 7 weeks. It's night or day right now, and I think there's a real human element to it that I think Bears fans are missing.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest part people are missing that they don't really realize is the impact of Andrew Billings, him inside. And I think he was such a force in there as a run defender, and he was actually really good in the pass game. I know the sack numbers weren't there, but the pressures, his ability to push the pocket inside, and I think it really allowed Dexter to really come home, especially, if Billings is in there pushing the pocket, Dexter usually had the one-on-one that he was able to come home a lot of times. So I think they're really missing a guy like Andrew Billings, especially when you look at the Bears struggling to stop the run. That's a big part. Anytime you have a dominant nose tackle like him clogging up, getting the penetration, disrupting pullers, things of that nature, they're definitely missing a guy like him. And you look at Zach Pickens, something that we talked about before the game, that Nick talked about, him and Coach Eric Washington working together. And listen, no disrespect to Zach Pickens at all, but I just don't think he's ready for that type of role. Like Andrew Billings was the real deal when it came to run stopping. And I think he really was a leader on that defensive line. So guys like Jervon Dexter, some of the younger guys that were in there getting playing time, they looked over to him, and he's not there anymore. So I think they're really missing him, and that's not talked about enough because when you look at the defense as a whole, you always need that some kind of dominant interior presence. And you look at some of the best teams in the league, they always have that as the common denominator. So I think that's where a lot of those run issues are. And then in the passing game, if you're not pushing the pocket, it's really hard. Quarterbacks can get outside the pocket. They have all day, and that's what we're seeing, the lack of pressure.
Yeah, going into this game, the Bears the Bears were tied for 4th going into the game, so it's changed, and I haven't had a chance to look at the leaderboard in turnover margin for the season. But of the teams in the top 11, every team had a winning record with the exception of the Bears, who were tied for 4th going into the game here. at plus 10. I think now, they had the fumble, so I guess it would be plus 9, right? So, the Bears have done well of winning that turnover margin, which was an emphasis that Lovie Smith used to tell you guys all the time. I can remember him reciting it in many press conferences, is winning the turnover battle. And the Bears are doing that most weeks. I mean, Caleb Williams has like 260 straight consecutive passes without an interception. I mean, certainly some luck involved there, but at the same time, I think only 5 interceptions on the season. He does have a fumble on a pass. So, it's not like he's completely turnover free here, but that was his first turnover since the Washington game. I think one of the things that I noticed that for me, I didn't bring up in the post-game show that I want to bring up pre-game, Corey, we talked about, Hogue listed off the things that he wanted to see from Thomas Brown going into this game. And after he was done, he didn't mention like holding a guy like Tyreek Stevenson accountable if he's going to trip someone on the sideline. And not just Tyreek, anybody on the team. If they're to do something, how is he going to immediately respond in that moment? And so we talked about, I certainly talked about it with Lance a lot, and Lance Briggs, last night in our After Dark post-game show. And we did mention it on our main post-game show as well, but Jonathan Owens getting an interception and the team running to the other sidelines while they're losing by 30 to do their, routine celebration that you see many teams do in the league. Well, many teams aren't losing by 30 when they do that typically. Like, to me, that not only was an embarrassment for the Bears and Jonathan Owens and everybody that partook in that little celebration, but I thought that was a big failed test in Thomas Brown's first game as interim head coach. Like, that's an opportunity to right there and set the tone and say, hey, look at the scoreboard, guys. We're not doing this crap.
Exactly.
Let's get back on the sideline. We got work to do. You're making us look like fools right now. And
there was no excuse for that, because that's one that comes to mind. You look at Rome Odunze when he scored, right? We're still down by a bunch and he's celebrating and dancing. I just think the thing that we talked about last night is there's no leaders on this team. There really isn't. I look back when I played, and obviously we had great guys like Peanut and Urlacher and Lance Briggs that set the tone of the locker room. So if you made a mistake, if you did something wrong, they held you accountable. And I think it was like the thing, like you don't want to disappoint them. So obviously, right, you made a mistake, you're not going to make that second mistake again, right? They call out things, the communication. That's something me and Lance talked about in that players only segment. There's not enough communication. They're not being physical with the receivers. And a lot of George Kittle was just simple crossing patterns where you just have to pass off the zone. And Lance really talked about that in detail, about being able, especially with a guy like Kittle, is getting physical with him, getting your hands on him, rerouting him. Don't make things easy. And the Bears made it as easy as it can be for him, for Juwan Jennings. Literally, they had a field day over there. And, hats off to Brock Purdy. And people are saying Shanahan had this great plan. But I think it's the opposite. I think the Bears didn't execute. And, yes, the defense was very vanilla. They didn't bring many blitzes. And when they did, they kind of telegraphed it. But when I look at it, it was simple crossing patterns. It was simple routes that the Bears were 10 yards off on 3rd and 4, right? They didn't pass off. They weren't physical with people. So that's the most disappointing part, right? You didn't want Eberflus here. You felt good about Eric Washington. You felt good about the direction of the team, and you come out flat and you play soft. And that's the biggest thing, as call a spade, right? Jalen Johnson went on the air and talked about Matt Eberflus and all this stuff. But I saw him multiple times making business decisions where he had a chance to lay a pop on somebody and, kind of step to the back. Tyreek Stevenson, right, at 4th and 1, where they get it stacked up and he kind of tippy-toeing in there, doesn't want to stick his head in and make a play, because that would have been a huge momentum builder. You get the ball back in a situation, you turn over when the offense was actually going. So there's a lot of people that I'm thinking, like, you're talking this, you're talking that, but you got to look in the mirror at the end of the day and say, am I doing everything I need to do? Right? Because you can play the blame game. Everybody can do that. When you lose and you're in the locker room, everybody plays the blame game. Hey, it's his fault. It's that fault. Obviously, Eberflus had a lot to do with the critical game time decision. That's why he got fired. Don't get me wrong. I think if he could handle that better, he'd still be the coach. Yep. But at the end of the day, you wanted him gone, and you thought he was a scapegoat for everything, every little decision. But the thing is, you got to look in the mirror, and there's no leaders on this team. There's nobody taking accountability. And that's what you don't want to have in the locker room. And I know it's kind of hard sometimes when you're bringing in players, but the veteran players that they're going to bring in, they have to bring in proven leaders to change this locker room, change the culture of it. And I think that's a non-negotiable. Obviously, you have to have the talent in there, but they have to have guys that keep people accountable. And you look at some of the good organizations, like I look at like Jalen Carter. He was in a really good situation with like Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox when he first came in the league. Veteran guys that kind of like right the ship for him and say, listen, you can't do this, buddy, right? Get your head out of there, some of those things. So the Bears just don't have that. And going into this offseason, they got to fix that because there is a lack of leadership, and that's evident from what we see. And guys not talking to the media after the game. You can't even talk to the media. So that's what I'm understanding. Your job as a pro, we have to talk to the media. Good games, bad games. Don't be that guy that only when things are good, you want to show up and talk to the media. I had 2 sacks. I had 2 touchdowns, right? But when things are bad, you don't play good. You dart when the media comes there. So don't be that guy.
Joey, before we bring in Adam and take a quick break, do you have any final thoughts you want to throw in? And obviously I'll be happy to bring you back into the program here in a little bit too.
Yeah, of course. Look, just kind of buttoning up some of the things that Corey said. Yeah, I mean, if you take if you just half the Matt Eberflus 90% win probability rates, if you give us half of those wins, 100%, he's still the head coach right now. That's how crazy some of these losses have been and what the Bears fans have had to endure, not just this year, but the last couple of years. And yeah, Corey, man, I mean, look, it's funny to think about too as well. Like I often, you make me thinking about when you think historically about leaders on the football team, are there certain position groups that usually gravitate towards leaders on this team? And I immediately think of guys in the trenches, guys in the offensive line, defensive line. I think linebackers. I typically don't, maybe even a safety. I typically don't think of nickelbacks. I don't think of wide receivers. And we've paid some money to some of these guys at position groups that don't necessarily gravitate toward leadership. I'm not necessarily going to say Caleb Williams should automatically become the leader of this team because he's a rookie. Braggs, you were 100% right yesterday. We don't just give Jonathan Taves the C on his jersey, nor should we be giving Caleb Williams the C on his helmet for captain, not for Chicago Bears right off the bat. It's something that you earn. So I'm also kind of curious of how we allocate dollars in leadership positions with position groups on this team. We all know about the trenches right now, and I think that's something that they need to address. When we signed Tremaine Edmonds, everyone knows that he was a quiet leader. You know what I mean? That's something that we have to move forward with. So that's the stuff that makes me think of as we move forward, reshaping this roster.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about all that here, and we're going to bring Adam Brink into the show here shortly. Want to give a shout out to my guy, Michael Renew, $4.99 super chat. Fire polls, head scratching personnel choices, mediocre drafting, and horrific character evaluation. There isn't one single leader on this team. Appreciate you, Michael, contributing to the show. Get your super chats in, get your thoughts in, get your questions in. I'm highlighting some different ones as we're about to bring Adam Rank from NFL Network back here to CHGO Bears After Dark. But first, got to give a quick shout out to our guys over at CHSN. We're sponsored by Chicago Sports Network, the new home of the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox games. CHSN will broadcast more than 300 live games per year across the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox, and will feature a full lineup of original Chicago-focused sports content. They're also Chicago-based, Chicago-built, and Chicago to the core, and they're bringing it to every corner of Chicago across our 77 neighborhoods and beyond of this great city. At CHSN, Chicago comes first. Visit chsn.com for more info on how to watch the Bulls, the Blackhawks, and White Sox games all season long. Also, want to give a shout out to our guy over in Fox Lake. That is Ray Chevy. Appreciate Ray. We were just out there here right before Thanksgiving. Got to give a shout out to him. He helped change my oil. He rotated my tires. So shout out to Ray. With 2025 right around the corner, now is your chance to save big on your next vehicle. The model year-end sales event is going on now at Ray Chevrolet. Head in today to shop their huge selection of new Chevy models with special model year-end prices. Right now, take 10 to 20% off MSRP on select new Chevy models or shop over 125 of their vehicles priced under $20,000. As one of the top-selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you'll always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. Visit our partner this December at their location on Route 12 in Fox Lake or at raychevrolet.com. And if you've heard of Ray Chevrolet, then you've also heard of Ray's Price Promise. They're guaranteed to make your vehicle more affordable than ever with no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees ever. That means the incredible prices we're talking about now, you can expect to see the very same when you shop Ray Chevy in-store or online. Shop the model year-end sales event all month long by visiting Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. Okay, we're going to do a little swap out, a little line change here on the program. Joining the show once again is our guy, the king of the meatballs, Adam Rank of NFL Network, joins us once again. Adam, I got 18 holes in today. That's why I'm in the garage. It's a nice day here in the Midwest, and so I was able to hit the links. And so even though it was a tough day yesterday, today's been looking up, and it's always a better day when we get to hang out with you. So welcome back, my friend.
No, appreciate it. I'm a little jealous. I know you got upset with the Instagram reel that I sent because my golf season doesn't really start until January. And so that's when I start gearing up for golf. I've been hitting the driving range a lot lately, but I don't really get to play too much until January hits. Then it takes off.
Thanks for rubbing it in, Rank, when we're in these cold weather.
No, I'm just saying.
We got to go to simulator golf.
When you go out, when one of the early PGA Tour events is at PGA West out there in my I have a house out in the desert. It's about it's actually a golf cart's drive away from that. So if I take my golf cart, they always just wave you through. They just assume I'm coming from one of the other courses, and then you wander up, and all of a sudden you're at the the Greg Norman course using their driving range, and nobody's the wiser. So well, I'm glad that you got 18 in, Greg. You needed to do something today. I can tell our moods by the lack of Bears clothing that we wear. Like you can tell, like, hey, I'm wearing Christmas stuff. You're wearing Purdue stuff. I'm assuming Corey's got a Warriors jersey going?
Warriors, Tim Hardaway.
I was going to say, I was going to play a guessing game at the end to see who it was. Tim Hardaway.
I was going to say Latrell Sprewell, but yeah, same era. Well, no, Hardaway was earlier.
One day with my mouth at the stadium or at the studio, I'm sure Corey might have to pull a Latrell on me.
Oh,
DJ Carlissimo, that's how you are.
Yeah.
So Adam, let's get into it. Corey and I and Joey, of course, have been discussing this. Obviously, one of the toughest losses of the year when you consider just how ugly that first half was. And even though the Bears, showed a little bit of signs of a pulse in the second half, ultimately when you consider everything that happened over the last 10 days with Matt Eberflus being fired and everything that was said after the loss on Thanksgiving to Detroit, for this team to come out against San Francisco. San Francisco was 5-7 at the time, certainly still playing for something in a talented roster, but an injured roster. And the Bears just had no answer whatsoever on either side of the ball. And as Corey pointed out, in the first segment, guys making business decisions, as I've pointed out, a little too much celebrating for my liking late in the second half as the team's, getting their face kicked in. So overall for you, what was the most disappointing thing you saw, in the loss to San Francisco yesterday?
I guess it's the not lack of effort, but it just felt like there was no urgency that everybody, and I think that we as fans, and I know Corey is a former player, but you kind of assume like, we got rid of, we staged the mutiny, we got what we wanted, and then everything's going to be fine. But then you realize if you've spent any time during your educational upbringing reading the book Animal Farm, it's not always like, it's just not everything is going to be completely changed. And so what you saw was just disappointing because I thought there would be a better effort. And I thought that there would be the team would at least come out like a house of fire. One of the things that always struck me about the Matt Eberflus era is that the first drive defensively was always kind of not great, but they gave up a lot of ground, but always felt them out. It always felt like they made some adjustments. And going back and self-reflecting on this, Matt Eberflus, like we've kind of like overlooked how good Matt Eberflus was defensively, because as bad as he was with clock management and all that stuff, they made adjustments. I know that sometimes the idea of second half adjustments are overrated, but like the Bears would give up a lot of ground. Like we saw this again. We see this every week against Detroit or whomever. You give up a drive, you give up a touchdown, and then that team doesn't really score a lot after that. This was the first time in a long time that somebody really went out there and continued scoring on this team throughout the course of the game. So that stuck out to me. And then just watching offensively and just seeing like nothing. I mean, I guess we were able to benefit from Thomas Brown taking over the play calling because he was able to focus in on that. But now we've put him on the sideline. We've asked him to run everything and not just his one little section of the world. And you see how difficult this is. So if anything, you know, it kind of gets me back to the points that we've been talking about. And Greg, I know that you're a Belichick person, even though he might end up being a Tar Heel. And I'm a Vrabel guy of like, we need the head coach who does that and then let the coordinators do their gig. And I kind of felt like that was a strong case for that, because I think they're with the way this team's going, we need somebody, we need that overarching person kind of overlooking everything. And that was on display on Sunday.
Yeah. When I look at that game, it's just so disheartening defensively, just how they didn't show up at all. And Eric Washington, who coached me in college, he coached me in the NFL, and he's had coordinator experience. I was just surprised at not only the vanilla defense, but just not bringing pressure at all. And literally the guys' simple crossing routes, they weren't passing off. And Edmonds and Edwards, they're veterans. They're guys that have been around, that are usually really good in pass coverage, and they had no chance on George Kittle at all. And Lance was talking about it. We were on the players only about being physical, rerouting the receivers, Jennings and a guy like Kittle, and there was none of that. So there was no physicality in the game. There was business decisions. Jonathan Owens, the one time came up, didn't even make an attempt to wrap up the guy. I'm wondering, like, what was that? Like, that you saw throughout the whole game. And it's just that you would put that on tape for as good as they've been, right? Even through the bad games, they were still that bend but don't break, right? There was always an opportunity where, hey, they may drive down 90 yards, but hey, we're going to hold them to that field goal. Yeah, we're gonna make a turnover here. And this is what was none of that, especially when you have a rookie quarterback that, you know, the offense has been up and down. There's been struggles, especially in the first half. You thought, hey, defensively, we're going to bow up, we're going to buck up for them, and we're going to be able to get them the ball back. And we just saw none of that. Honestly, the 49ers probably could have put up a 50-burger if they wanted to. I think they were being generous towards the end of the game. But I thought George Kittle was going to break the tight end record. He had 100 yards in the first quarter. I'm like, oh, no.
And especially wanted to do it against the Bears. Yeah.
So would have been maybe we can – I've been trying to get Kyle Shanahan of the Bears, but maybe we need to figure out how we can steal George Kittle to come over here because, you know, I think –
we got Adam Shaheen. We're fine. Oh, wait.
Well, you brought up Mike Vrabel, and, you know, I was just in, you know, as I'm always famously in Twitter spaces arguing with the masses of Bears Nation. And
that's all he does, you know, Twitter spaces.
What?
Yeah. Well, every day I get like 30 notifications that Braggs is in a Twitter space.
You got to beta test your thoughts, and it's a healthy environment to work some of your.
Is it healthy? I don't know.
Yes. It's very beta thing.
You're like. Do.
Yeah,
he's like, you also eat a lot of Taco Bell, so I don't want to know what your idea of healthy is.
He said $35. That's a lot of money for Taco Bell.
Don't come to me for health advice, but it is one of my many practices of how
$35 at Taco Bell?
I don't know how you do that.
Yeah,
I've tried to spend over like 25 and I can't do it.
Yeah, even with the kids, it never gets that high.
Well, you know what? This is a judgment-free zone here at CHGO Bears After Dark, and some of you might spend a certain amount of Taco Bell, and then I spend my amount. But getting back to what I wanted to ask you, because you brought up Mike Vrabel, and we've certainly talked about, you know, the different head coaching opportunities here in front of us, and, you know, obviously Thomas Brown getting the audition. Well, first game out the gate, he might have taken himself out of the running. In one half. So when you talk about Mike Vrabel, one of the things, as I was saying in Twitter Spaces just a little bit ago, was you could make the argument, while Caleb Williams is the crown jewel of the Chicago Bears, and everyone recognizes that, and they need to do everything in their power to ensure that he's not just a good quarterback and maybe even the best quarterback for the Chicago Bears ever, because that's not a high bar to reach, but a great quarterback in the NFL. And so people are looking at Ben Johnson, people are looking at different offensive options, but you bring up Mike Vrabel, and the reason I want to kind of expand on that is, the thing that I said in Spaces was like, hey, you could make the argument, as important as it is to make sure that Caleb Williams is the guy, he's done such a good job with arguably the worst play caller in the NFL this season, as Shane Waldron gets shown the door 12 games in. Luke Getsy might, got fired a few weeks before him, and, so he was also here in Chicago. But you could make the argument that toughness for this team is the most important factor going into next year. Like, I think Caleb Williams is going to be all right, and they absolutely need to get a good offensive play caller and somebody that'll continue to help develop him. But it seems to me that whoever we're going to throw at him, he's going to flourish as long as the person is competent. But the one thing that this entire team needs is a lot of toughness. And I think Mike Vrabel fits that billing. So I just, from your standpoint and some of the selling points you've made on your program on the Sick Podcast, for you, why would Mike Vrabel be ahead of the list of some of the offensive names like Joe Brady and Ben Johnson or Cliff Kingsbury?
Just watch a Lions post-game presser and watch the way Dan Campbell composes himself. That's the kind of toughness I want for this Bears team. Like, I want to go back. Like, this used to be the black and blue division for a reason back in the day. And the Lions are going to be that hard-ass team as long as Dan Campbell's there. The Vikings will be this finesse-type team. The Packers will be this finesse-type team. I want the Bears to be aligned with the Lions and be like, nope, we're going to smash these two teams. We're going to smash these two teams, and then we're going to slug it out with the Lions. And that's the kind of attitude that I want. I want to go out there and really get after people. And, I've been hyping myself up by watching a lot of 85 Bears stuff, and just, I know a lot of hits that would be illegal today and stuff like that, things that you probably couldn't get away with anymore in the NFL. But at the same time, like, if you're a tough team that nobody wants to play, and this is a point that Chris Long had made, is like, when these teams play the Lions, the following week, they seem to be lethargic. Like, they really went through something. And I would love to be in a situation where teams are like, even if they beat us, they dreaded coming to Chicago or having Chicago on their schedule because they got it taken to them. I want to be that kind of team. I want to be tough. I want to go back to that kind of thing. And I think as the NFL is going into this, like, hey, offensive masterminds and all that stuff, I want to kind of flip the script a little bit, kind of like the Lions are doing. That's who I want to emulate. I know people look at the Packers, but I want to go after that. And I think Mike Vrabel brings that toughness. And one thing that always gets overlooked, and I know that we've talked about this before, but when everybody's like, we need an offensive play caller, I get that. I understand. But you have to remember who Mike Vrabel hired as his offensive coordinators. It was Matt LaFleur, followed by Arthur Smith. I think that I can trust Mike Vrabel to make a pretty good hire at offensive coordinator and then bring a lot of toughness to the Chicago Bears.
No, I agree. It reminds me a lot of Harbaugh, like those type of teams. I remember back when he coached in San Francisco, we played them. They beat the brakes off us. Like, when teams went over there, it was a lunch pail game where they were going to run the ball. That was their identity. You knew it was coming. You couldn't stop it. They were going to out-physical you. And that's something, the identity of a team. And that's what I was hoping this Bears season would be offensively, because you got a young quarterback. You think, let's take the pressure off them. They are better at run blocking. That's what I thought, than pass blocking. So obviously, hey, let's set the tone. Let's run the ball downhill. And it was, at first, it was very inconsistent. Then they got into the running game, and that's when the offense started to come together. But I think the identity going forward has to be smash mouth football. Obviously, you have a very talented quarterback, Caleb Williams, that can air it out. But you look at Justin Herbert, right? He's throwing the ball less than he ever has, right? And they're winning games. And I know last night they didn't win, but they had a chance. Hey, that field goal, if that went the other way. But they are playing smash mouth football. That's the identity of their team. When you play them, you know exactly what's going on. It works. It's efficient. They play great defense. And yes, would I like Caleb to throw for 500 yards? Yes, that would be awesome. But I'd rather a more balanced offense, us winning games, him looking good, him completing the ball when the game's on the line. And I think the mark of a good player is not just stats, right? Because I think Kirk Cousins is somebody that woos and wows you with stats. But when the game's on the line, usually he fails to come up. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. And I look at Patrick Mahomes, people say, well, he's average, he's this, that, and the other. But on that last drive, when the game's on the line, what does he do? Elude two guys, throws it to Travis Kelce for a first down, and what do? They hold it down to 1 second, and they kick the field goal. He always comes up clutch, and that's what I want with my quarterback. I couldn't care less if he throws for 400 or 500 yards. I'd rather throw for 200 every game, be efficient, look good, run this offense, mix and match the run and pass, and play great defense. That's what I'd rather have.
Yeah.
You know, and it feels like Caleb's going to throw for about 3,500 yards this year. And what is it going to get us? So, yeah, I'm with you, Corey. I'd rather just be like this efficient team that's running over people with a quarterback that can beat you when he needs to beat you, as opposed to somebody who's like, oh, look, we got a 4,000-yard passer finally.
Yeah, 100%. It's, you know, there's a lot to unpack here, and we'll get into some more things. We've got to take a break here shortly. Stephen D saying in the chat, I don't care if the next head coach of the Chicago Bears kicks puppies as long as he wins some effing football. You know what? Don't go that far, Steven. And Addie and I here at our house have been putting out a full court press.
I thought you were about to say something else.
To get a puppy in the Braggs residence. So we're not kicking puppies here.
You better not, or else I'm coming down to Indiana and we're going to have.
Yeah. By the way, adopt, don't shop, if I can say that too.
Yes, 100%. My first dog was adopted and from Costa Rica. He was homeless. And and then we
here it comes. Great. Why did you have to say it was from Costa Rica? Now we're gonna have
Taco Bell, and then
we're gonna have like 90 comments in the chat about closing the borders just because you said that.
Well, this dog was the greatest dog in the world. May he rest in peace. I love Bailey very much. But yes, my sister went to grad school in Costa Rica, and he was nothing but skin and bones. And by the end of his good life here, he was one of the most spoiled dogs, rightfully so. So we're gonna get into some more talk. JS is in the chat. He says Braggs ain't even watching or listening. He's smoking something to keep warm where he is. That's right. I'm smoking a stogie here on After Dark, JS. JS is in his feelings because he's been doing nothing but talking in the comments all day on our channel. So we appreciate you watching and listening.
What is his affiliation? What is his deal?
Who, JS?
Yeah.
He's just, everybody's on the fire.
Is he an angry Bears fan, or is he a fan of another team?
Everybody's an angry Bears fan right now, Adam, and nobody's safe on the firing line, and that includes me, that includes Jalen Johnson, or DJ Moore, or Cole Kmet, or Adam Hogue. Everybody is susceptible for being in front of the firing line. Right. Even Jonathan Owens celebrating too much. Tremaine Edmonds, a lot of Bears fans are mad.
How do we feel about Roma Dunze's celebration?
Well, and that's what I mean. Lance Briggs had Roma Dunze on the firing line for his celebration with the touchdown. So nobody is safe right now, but that includes you, JS. And so you can try to keep me honest. He was yelling at me last night for saying I was talking too much with Briggs. Now I'm not talking enough. So you're going to have to pick a lane, JS, at some point. So, but before we get into more Bears talk here on this fine program, we're going to take a quick timeout and give a shout out to our guys over at Sunnyside. JS could probably use some Sunnyside at this point, maybe take a chill pill. Our friends at Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary are here to elevate your summer. Sunnyside is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping. They have a crazy selection with over 100 different strains to choose from with easy online ordering and in-store pickup. Shop in the store nearest you, Illinois, for expert guidance from their staff, or select from quality lines like Cresco or Florical. They got a lot of different ones like Good News Island Vibes, Destination Relaxation, Puff Puff Paradise. Launching from now until December 31st, Sunnyside Scratch and Stash is back again this holiday season. Receive a scratch-off card every time you shop. Now through December 31st, every card is a winner. You could win big, like 50% off, or $100 off your next purchase. Hurry in to see what you win. Visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter the promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Bright buys every day, only for 21 or older, or Illinois medical card holders. And then also got to give a quick shout out over to our guys, of course, our presenting sponsor of the night, our guys at ComEd. And ComEd, ComEd can help businesses save money by becoming more energy efficient. And if you didn't know that, that's exactly what ComEd does. The energy efficiency program can help find up to 35% in energy savings. So what does a business have to do? Well, they have to sign up for a free facility assessment at comed.com/biz. And if you're asking why aren't more businesses doing it, well, maybe JS forgot the website. So I'll repeat it for you, JS. It's comed.com/biz. I said comed.com/biz. That should do it. Terms and conditions apply. Offers are subject to change. Actual savings will vary by customers' energy usage and rate. The ComEd Energy Efficiency Program is funded in compliance with state law. All right, as we roll things along.
When it's Sunnyside, do you have to have a prescription, or can you just roll in there?
I think you could just roll in there.
What are your guys' laws like?
It's legalized. It's like Cali.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Even Missouri's legalized.
They'll let you in there for sure. So, getting into this a little deeper for you, like we said, there's this firing line going across the board, and everybody's got their meatball takes. I got everybody yelling at me about Cole for his drop on the 2-point conversion. You asked about Rome Odunze's celebration after his touchdown. He had 2 on the day. Always good to see Rome Odunze and Caleb, Williams, working on that connection. So for you, Adam, is there anybody on your meatball firing line specifically that you're looking at that maybe it's unfair, but we're all in our feelings, so somebody's got to, take a turn in the bucket? Is there anybody that meets that description for you, Adam?
One of the guys in the comments who said that Caleb's the QB4 of this draft class. I wish we could freeze these things in time, because you never get your comeuppance that you deserve. I spent some time going through Dan Hans's Twitter today because he had a tweet back in March talking about how good it was that Sam Darnold was getting an opportunity in Minnesota. And all the people are like, Darnold sucks, blah, 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 and going through all this stuff. So I go through and I like all these tweets. Like, yeah, remember when you said this? Similarly, I want to go through all this like 5 years from now. I want to look back when Caleb is the quarterback that we think he's going to be and be like, yeah, remember when you guys were calling him the QB4 on the seat? Like, it's going to be so ridiculous. I'm curious, though. There's nobody like, I don't know. Like, I understand the frustration. And I even understand a kid like Rome Odunze, like, hey, like, you're getting an opportunity to play NFL football. You score a touchdown. You want to go out there and celebrate a little bit. Like, yeah, maybe have a little bit more presence of mind. Like, dude, we are down 38-13. Like, maybe we don't go out and do this or anything like that. But I'm curious too, like, what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks? Because if you think about somebody like Keenan Allen, who I love, and I have nothing but good things about Keenan Allen, but it's like, he's going into free agency. Like, are we going to see him do the Jalen Ramsey? Like, oh, I think my back hurts. I can't. Like, he's got to protect himself at some point, right? Like, right. I got money coming up here in free agency. Will we get an opportunity to see more Rome Odunze? Will we ever get to see Tyler Scott out there go out and give these guys an opportunity? So I guess if there was one guy, Edmonds is the one that I was a little disappointed in on Sunday, where it's like Corey was even alluding to earlier, like, you're the veteran guy. Like, you should know better. Like, that's the kind of stuff where it just kind of bothers me. We're going through the motions. Like, what am I? I mean, I am so happy because after the Arizona game, I had plans to go up to Santa Clara and go be a part of this nonsense. And then after that Arizona game, I'm like, I'm canceling everything. I'm not going. And then Thomas Brown gets promoted. And I'm like, oh, I wish I was going. Even flirted with the idea of throwing down the $400 for a same week ticket up to San Jose. And I'm so glad that I did it. But I just it's not like I still love the team, but I'm so disappointed. Not even mad, just disappointed. Just like, all right. Like, I don't know. I kind of want to be into Roman Dunze and Caleb and all those guys and support them, but at the same time, it's like it's just I don't know. I'm apathetic. I think apathetic is the way to put it.
We've reached apathy as a fan base, apathy towards the team and anger towards each other. And so you're seeing a lot of that over the last couple of days because, I mean, no one can hear you scream. George McCaskey's not going to hear us yelling. Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren are trying to do their jobs. They don't care what we think. The players, for the most part, aren't going to respond to our cries. But we can yell at each other, and that'll solve nothing. But it might make us feel better for the immediate, So, for you, Corey, it's like when you look at this, let's try to turn this, bringing up Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles, our guy here in the background, Joey Christopoulos, who's working hard, helping me produce this show, says, a big report that came across Waddle and Sylvie here, probably just not too long ago, saying that Ryan Poles reportedly is frustrated having to report to Warren and might not have taken the job if he knew about the power dynamic. So, we don't, if you looked at last week when Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren were up next to each other, I mean, that report might line up. Ryan Poles didn't look very happy. I mean, why should he? He just had to fire his head coach. That was his first big hire as the general manager. But Corey, when you look at this power dynamic with Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles in this upcoming head coaching decision, how worried are you about how this decision is going to be made? And do you have a preference on the hierarchy? Because I'm almost, as crazy as it sounds, kind of team Kevin Warren, because he's at least something different than the people that have made the mistakes here for the last few years. And I love Ryan Poles. I've been a big advocate of his, but let's face it, he was somebody that was in the room that chose to hire Shane Waldron. So that doesn't give me a lot of hope that he can identify the right offensive coach if it's Ben Johnson after you tried to sell me on Shane Waldron. So for you, Corey, where do you stand?
And Luke Getsy. So for you, where do you stand on how you want to see this process play out?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of am in favor of Kevin Warren having some input and saying it, just because I think Poles is the type that, in my opinion, I think he's a great guy, but I think he's kind of a pushover. I really do. I think there's been reports that he kind of got wormed into keeping Eberflus potentially when, there's been reports that he didn't exactly want him. So if that is true, and you didn't make the decision when you had the opportunity to potentially right the ship and get a new head coach, if that is true, I think Kevin Warren should have more say over this organization and kind of the direction and just making sure that we're making the right decisions. Because right now, the state of the Bears organization, it's a laughingstock of the league. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And as a former player, it pains me to see, because I feel like even through the bad years, we've still been competitive and defensively. And when you turn on that game and you watch that game on yesterday, it doesn't seem any kind of characteristic of what Bears football is, especially defensively, right? I couldn't care less what the offense does. Yes, I want to see Caleb well. I want to see the offense have some rhythm and all that. But defensively, you're known as the defensive ball club. And they did whatever they wanted to do to you. Like you look like a mid-major college team playing against Georgia or Texas or Ohio State or Oregon. It was bad, and it looked like there was such a lack of talent on the Bears when that's not the case. They've been competitive against three of the best teams in the league and in the division. You play them down to the wire, and then you have a struggling San Francisco team that you can't even compete with. From the game was lost after they scored that first one. The game was downhill after that. You couldn't even hang with them after all the injuries to Trent Williams. Ayuk's on IR. Christian McCaffrey's out. Mason's out. Third string running back, right? Backup left tackle. Couldn't get consistent pressure. Couldn't get turnovers. Couldn't get takeaways. And Brock Purdy, without some of these guys, he's kind of struggled. So I thought this was an opportunity with the new head coach where you can hit the ground running. You could be reinvigorated. See, it was Eberflus's, this was his fault the whole time. And you had a chance to prove that it was. And you proved the opposite, right? I think this is the mark of, yes, Eberflus made those terrible game time decisions at the end of the game. But, the thing is, you're pros out there. You have to play week in and week out. Because what you're putting on tape is, people are going to be free agents next year. People are determining if they're going to be on the team or not. So you got to play as hard as you can, as long as you can. Every opportunity you get in the NFL, you have to take advantage of. Yeah. I think anytime you go out there and there's lack of effort, there's business decisions. That's kind of a slap in the face, because there's people that would die to play another snap in the NFL. You know, think about how many guys right now are free agents right now that played last year somewhere but haven't had an opportunity this year, that would be licking their chops to have an opportunity to play on this team. So, you know, anytime you put on that helmet, you know, you put on that Bears jersey, you got to take pride in it, right? Because the fan base is unbelievable, the organization, the history behind it. But, you know, you got to respect the game anytime you go out there. And I feel like it was a disrespect of the game. I do, just because what they put out there was no fight. There was none of that. You know, it's something you see sometimes from a struggling college team or a high school team. You don't see that in the NFL.
Yeah, it was disappointing. There's no question about it. Laz in the chat agrees with you. Rank, time to do it right. Hire Vrabel and have him bring in his GM. And, of course, my buddy JS says, love Corey Wootton. Articulate. He went to class and he's football smart. I think what JS meant to say was let Corey Wootton articulate. So maybe, JS, you need to go to class and work on your sentence structure, and then we can have a coherent. No, he's not fine. He's been talking smack all day.
Oh my gosh, Frank, he is so sensitive right now. Sensitive sound.
I've been working out. I'm overtrained. 14 to 15 days.
It ain't sensitive. If you're gonna dish it, you better be ready to take it. And this is CHGO Bears After Dark. So if you're gonna say something in this show, you're gonna get called out by me. And of course, Tully says mispronouncing articulate is classic brag. So.
Hey, please just roast Braggs.
That's fine. I'll take a roast. I'll take a roast all day. But JS hasn't been able to spell all day either. So both things can be true. Now, Adam.
Yes.
Going back to Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren, it seems to me they're going to kind of run into a cross in the road. And that is, if you're going to keep Ryan Poles with the next head coach, you're going to have to do what you did with Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy and Mitch Trubisky and extend Ryan Poles' contract to line up with the contract of the next head coach, which also aligns with Caleb Williams. And if the next head coach doesn't feel comfortable with Ryan Poles as his GM, and they can't guarantee that they're going to give him a contract extension, then maybe Kevin Warren has to make the tough decision and try to, you know, reverse this decision of saying, I'm going to keep Ryan Poles, and then maybe show him the door to bring in a GM that will line up with the next head coach. Do you think that there is still a chance that Ryan Poles is no longer the GM of the Chicago Bears when the season ends?
No, there's an absolute chance. You know, if this losing streak continues the way it does, if the Bears end up with 4 wins on the entirety of the season, I think at some point you got to start also looking to the GM. And I think that's one of the things that started creeping into my mind on Sunday, was watching that game and being like, you know what, at some point, you got to look at the general manager too. Like, I love what he's done. I like him as a person. I think he's a good guy. I love the Caleb Williams situation. That was the right call. But at the same time, you know, people have to have some accountability. And I'm always of the mind, I typically would allow a GM to make 2 head coaching hires. Like, I really would give him that opportunity, especially when you're using a first-year guy. So for me, if you're asking me, I know the hot seat, like, yeah, King Poles definitely went on the hot seat. And honestly, this is the problem with the way the world works now, is that we're so quick to anger and everything and vent these frustrations, when if they go out and beat the Vikings on Monday night, we're going to have a different mindset. And as Corey was saying too, like, you play these divisional rivals all the way down to the last second, and you have these excruciating losses. And to be quite honest with you, we went into a game in Santa Clara that was a huge trap game for us. I remember driving home Friday morning after filming NFL Fantasy Live, and I listened to my guy, Jeff Manns, who's a Chicago person. He lives out in Arizona. He's done Sirius XM. And he goes, and this is the first, he was like, hey, he goes, everybody, you know, is just assuming the Bears are going to win. He's like, I go the other way. And he was kind of laying out why the 49ers were going to win that game. And he was spot on. And I'm like, and I'd already taped my circa picks. And I'm like, oh, damn it. I wish I would have thought of that. Because I usually feel I do a nice job of identifying that team that needs to win And I went on to KNBR that afternoon too. And I'm like, oh Christ, we're going to lose. And I'm like, this sucks. Cause like everybody's right, because this 49ers team, while banged up, is also very desperate. And they, in regard, I know they have injuries, but at the same time, they still have Brock Purdy, who's a pretty good quarterback, George Kittle. Jawan Jennings has played fantastic this year. And even Isaac Guerrero, who I understand when you look at the 49ers running back situation, Christian McCaffrey is top shelf. He's Glenn Gooley Blue. He is Pappy Van Winkle. And all these other running backs are Kirkland brand vodka. But you know what? Those are still very good, and nobody's the wiser. If you mix it into somebody's drink, they're not going to know. They're not going to know you're not serving them Grey Goose. They're fine. So I think we really did walk into a situation. So as upset, like as apathetic, I should say, as I am right now, I still want to sit here and let the Minnesota game play out before I get too reactive. Thomas Brown was thrust into a situation who a former passing game coordinator 3 weeks ago was suddenly thrust into being the head coach of this team. Let's give him another opportunity to go out there and kind of show what he's learning and see how this team responds. Because again, we will find out. And you know what? After we went from the Arizona game to the New England game, so it went from bad to worse, but then it got better. We'll see what this team does this time. Will they actually respond and do something, or are we just going to be mailing in the rest of the year? I'm willing to wait the 7 days to find this. What are we going to do about this show next week, though?
Yeah.
Because the game will be on.
Right. So we'll probably have to postpone After Dark to maybe on a Tuesday night or something, and obviously move around the scheduling of CHGO Bears After Dark. Because obviously, as we are here every week, Monday through Friday. We even got a show this week on Friday because of the schedule change, but we're live after every game. We have live pre-games, live post-games. We do watch-alongs. The Blackhawks guys are doing a live watch-along right now for the Blackhawks game because we cover all the sports here in Chicago. And when you sign up to become a diehard, that's what you get here at CHGO Bears and CHGO Sports. If you go to allchgo.com/diehard to sign up, you get a lot of different amenities at your disposal, including a free shirt, for signing up right away. And we appreciate everyone, including my guy, JS, and also my guy, T3P, who's in the chat. He's always Mr. Opposite Day. He says, media got everything you wanted, from Hard Knocks to Tyson Bagent, I don't know what that means, to Justin Fields being let go, and we're still not happy. Well, I don't think we all got everything we wanted.
And we wanted wins, too. That was part of it as well.
Team to be good. So I don't know why anybody would be happy at this point, but I appreciate you tuning in nonetheless, T3P. It's and then we also had a super chat here from Total Malarkey saying, Bears currently have as many losses in a row as the rest of the NFC North has combined. Y'all might need to tear it apart if you want to be competitive. And that going back to your point, Adam, about like how do they approach this? Do you want the offensive, strategic, analytics guy that's going to have this great offensive playbook, Ben Johnson, to try to match Matt LaFleur and Kevin O'Connell? Or do the king of the North right now is the Detroit Lions and the toughness of Dan Campbell, and match that with Mike Vrabel, because obviously, the toughness won out against the Green Bay Packers when the Lions took them on last Thursday. So I'd say at the very least, I think the silver lining is there is some good options available to the Bears. And at this point, we can only hope they don't screw it up, because somebody else said in the chat, well, you guys keep blaming this, that, and the other, but it's about who's at the top. Young Mind Elevation says y'all backtrack every week. So who you going to blame when Poles is gone? Who hired Poles? That's who you look at. Well, if you want to look at Kevin Warren, that's fair. He's certainly, somebody that we can consistently look at and see what his results end up being, whether it be the team, the coach, the stadium. But George McCaskey is the one at the top. And since he's taken over the Bears as the owner, the Bears have not been a good team. That's on his resume. But George McCaskey isn't going anywhere. We can look at him all day and criticize, the caliber of owner that he is, but there's really nothing we can do about that. So unless you just, don't want to give him your money or don't, tune into the games. That's your only option there. So, it's hard to say, what the best option is for the Bears, but I know there's a big culture shift that needs to happen because, as I said last night on the post game with Corey, Adam, this isn't a football serious organization. It's not just about the coach or the quarterback or a wide receiver or a play caller. It's about this organization as a whole becoming football serious, and they've been poisoned, from the top down, and that trickle down effect just continues to take place. So at this point, you just kind of have to hope, like some of these other organizations here in Chicago, whether it be the Blackhawks when ownership changed, or the Cubs when they won the World Series, and I know the White Sox and Bulls have had to go through it with Jerry Reinsdorf. I hate saying this, but we just have to hope they get lucky. The Bulls fell into Michael Jordan, and if not for that, what is Jerry Reinsdorf's resume as an owner of two teams here in Chicago? So,
like if Portland had drafted Michael Jordan, imagine that.
I'm very grateful.
He was the third pick in the draft.
Right. I'm
These
very
kids
grateful.
don't remember that.
Chicago, we got Sam Bowie, right?
That's right.
Portland
got Sam Bowie, right? Hakeem Olajuwon, I believe, was the number one.
He was the number one pick, followed by Sam Bowie, followed by Michael Jordan.
Right. So, and that's, sometimes that's what it takes is a little bit of luck. Bad owners can have good teams, but consistent organizations. Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season in 18 years. Mike Tomlin is a great coach, but you know what else he's backed by is a great organization that's only had 3 head coaches in their last 40 years. So that's not just a Mike Tomlin thing. They have, stability from the top down, from ownership to president to GM to head coach to players.
Yep.
And so the Bears trying to find that culture is easier said than done.
That's what I was talking about. As much as it pains me to say, is Green Bay from the top down, they've done it better for decades. Like they've hit on 3 quarterbacks. They draft talent, develop it better. Every year they're in the hunt because of their coaching. It matters. So this is probably the most critical offseason for the Bears and their organization. And in my opinion, I'm looking at everything right now. And I used to be a really big Poles fan. And now I'm thinking back, take the North and never give it back. And then I'm looking at, as a former offensive lineman, right, a guy that knows the trenches, right? You play against defensive linemen, offensive linemen, really hasn't brought in the type of talent that you want to see. And I look at, some of the best teams in the NFL right now, and the common denominator is usually the offensive line and the defensive line, right? I look at what the Chargers did, right? They went out and got Joe Alt years ago. They got the guy from Northwestern, Slater. So they have the 2 book tackles, and then they have Khalil Mack. They got Bosa. They got other guys. So they are really building the nucleus of the team around the offensive defensive lines. And I think that's something that Poles has failed to do, right? Yes, he did address it with Darnell Wright. Sweat, yes, he's a great left end. And I've always said this, he's underrated as a pass rusher, but he needs help, right? As a left end, he's anywhere from 7.5 to 9.5 sacks, but he needs a complement rusher, and that's something that we never did. The dominant 3 technique, that hasn't been found. And I think in this league, you have to have the dominant 3 technique, a dominant pass rusher, and then obviously you have to have 2 really stud tackles. Then you got to have road graders inside. And that's something that he really hasn't addressed. And that, for me, if you're building a championship team, yes, they have weapons offensively, but look where that has got them, right? They would be in such a better situation. I know Shane Waldron did a bad job of calling plays and all that, but if you have strong trenches, it makes everything that much easier, right? Especially defensively, too, the rushing cover. Yes, things are falling apart right now because of the lack of pressure, and it goes hand in hand. If you're playing soft coverage, right, you're not going to buy the rush a second. So it works hand in hand. But I think they have to really get the trenches going this offseason if you want to make a push, because the rebuild, we've been talking about that for 3 years. Where has that gotten us? We're back at square one at this point. So for me, that's the most frustrating thing, and I'm kind of questioning Ryan Poles and is he fit to lead this team to where we want to be?
Yeah, and Joey Christopoulos, who's working hard in the background, adds to this discussion saying 12 picks in the first 4 rounds, only 2 offensive linemen drafted in Ryan Poles' tenure, as I surprised Joey bringing him on the program.
It's like, oh, geez, there I am.
Well, it was just such a good point. I thought I'd bring you into the discussion. You got your dog here. What's the dog's name? Oh, and he's muted. He's muted. Look at at this. I just totally jumped him.
Holding the bag. This is Vito. Vito Corleone.
Vito.
There you go.
There you go.
How you doing? How you doing, Vito? Huh?
Out she goes.
We are a pro puppy
Italian
program.
dog.
I hope Jenny's watching because we need a puppy here in the Braggs residence. Anthony Wichter, let's round third here on this show here tonight. Anthony Wichter asks you, Woot, would you extend Ryan Poles to line up with the next head coach and obviously Caleb Williams' rookie contract?
No, I wouldn't. At this point, the way the season has gone, unless we see some drastic improvement with the way this team plays or the team in general. But right now, I don't think it'd be smart to keep him. I don't.
Well, so, I mean, this is the cross in the road here that I think Kevin Warren is going to have to acknowledge. And it's a hard needle to thread. Maddie Legend bringing some positivity, saying bear down. Let's get this top 5 pick. I mean, if you're following Tankathon, right now the Bears sit at 9 and everybody underneath them has 2 or 3 losses. But if you look at strength of schedule, it's reversed. Typically to make the playoffs, like sometimes if you have the weaker strength of schedule, that'll help in your favor. But in this instance, to have a higher pick, the better your strength of schedule is, the worse it is. And so if you look,
we lose all the tiebreakers. Yeah,
right. It's going to be very hard for the Bears to jump any of the 3-win teams. The Bears have 4 wins. So essentially the Bears would need to lose out, and all of the 3-win teams would have to win not just 1, but 2 games for Maddie, for you to get the Bears closer to that top 5. And of course, Corey, I think might kill me if I try to draft Travis Hunter or a running back from Boise State.
Oh God, don't do that.
I won't. I've learned my lesson, Corey. You said
all the money and draft capital, it goes for the offense and defensive line. I'm telling you, if they can do that, if they can really address this and beef it up, they'll be in a good situation because they do have playmakers offensively. That'll make things so much easier. The greatest quarterbacks in this game, the common denominator is usually the offensive line.
Yep.
Right.
I'm sorry, Josh. Just trying to move this thing along. I apologize, Corey, for cutting into you there. But Josh Canale says, much love and respect to you, Braggs and Adam Rand. Who are you looking at in the draft? Do you think we sign an edge in free agency or get one in the draft? I'm looking at Micah Parsons. Adam and Corey, you guys can handle this one if you have anybody. Rank, you have anybody in mind?
Well, you know what? We had, I think we'll see a free agent splash from the defensive side of the football. But when you look at the possibilities of a draft, we could end up with 3 picks in the top 40, which would be a great way to start to solidify the offensive and defensive line. And honestly, to me, and we could have our discussions about Braxton Jones and everything, we got to start working on the inside. The inside of the offensive line needs to get much better. Like it's just been, that's where the most of our, like Darnell Wright, I feel has like done a pretty good job. And I think Braxton's good. Like Braxton has these highlight plays where he'll obliterate somebody. And then there's also plays where he's getting worked. But I think that, I'm comfortable enough with him that if we can fix the interior, I would really love to go in that direction. And I would assume that one of the early free agent signings will be somebody on the interior of the offensive line. One of the early draft picks will be on somebody on the offensive line, and then going about it that way. But that's where all the resources need to go. And we can't really worry about, hurting people's feelings or anything like that. We got to go after that, and we got to address it. And when Corey was talking too about the offensive line, and it's like, it's been pretty, like the guys that like, we just never seem to have an answer. And there never seems to be any depth because something will go wrong. And it's like, but there's nobody to turn to. Like what? Like, how do you just like, Ryan Bates will be fine? It's like that. I mean, could have done a little bit of a better job there. So I don't know. That is, I think that's where we have to go, and that's where we need to start putting our resources.
So real quick about the offensive line. So the 06 team that made the Super Bowl, right? 05 team, 06 Super Bowl. They had probably the best offensive line the Bears have ever had, right? John Tate, Reuben Brown, Olin Kreutz,
Roberto
Garza, Fred Miller, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a pretty solid offensive line. They had 3 Pro Bowlers on there, right? That's why they were able to run the football. And listen, their quarterback situation wasn't the best. We have a way better quarterback situation than they had. But think about it. They won games because what do? They played great defense. They ran the ball. That was the identity of that offense. You knew when you played them, you had to bring your lunch pail as a defensive guy. I remember watching them on Sundays, road grading, right? And the thing is, they didn't allow anybody to late hit their quarterback. They didn't let people to push them from behind. They set the tone of that team, and I think it was a different era for the Bears offensive line. They need to get back to that, right? The identity of the team.
Joey, real quick. Mutt Greer says best center is at the University of Texas. He's ready, folks, with attitude. Mutt Greer bringing that name into the hat. And Joey, obviously, you and Corey do the All-City Big Ten podcast, and now we're getting into the college football playoff. And so I'm just curious, obviously you've got your eye close to the college football game and different names being thrown around there. So I'm just curious who you think would be a good fit or anybody that we should be watching for in the college football playoff.
Go ahead, Joey.
Oh, no. Well, I was going to say, I've been riding Seth McLaughlin on the center from Ohio State until they blew out his knee a couple of weeks ago. Which was a real blow. I think he was definitely, when we talk about interior, that was a huge one. But yeah, Texas, strong offensive line for sure. Keep an eye on a couple of the guys in the Penn State. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a little too early to tell who's the blue chip guy that's going to go top 10. I think it's a little too early to tell, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's too early. But there's one guy that stands out, and somebody mentioned Micah Parsons. Abdul Carter. Oh, he reminds me of Micah Parsons 2.0. I mean,
replicant.
Fast as can be, about 6'3", 6'4", about 250 to 260, runs like a deer, can pass.
Plays
rush.
The other side of Montez Sweat, Corey.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be one. Mason Graham, too, from Michigan. He's a stud in there. Interior.
What do you think about Will Campbell, the tackle from LSU?
Yeah, but Will Campbell, I like him too. But is he really a left tackle, though? Do you think he's a left tackle in the league?
Well, I mean, I'd want to know what you think.
I mean,
JS doesn't care what I think. I want to know what you think.
I think he's more of a right tackle potentially in the league. The guy from Texas, Joey, I'm drawing a blank on his name. The left tackle. I think he's the best left tackle coming out in college football. Drawing a blank on his name. But I think he's solid. I think he's somebody that is probably going to be one of the top guys picked in this draft.
Yeah, Kelvin Banks.
Kelvin Banks, yep.
Yeah,
Junior,
Kelvin
right?
Banks.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I was going to get close, but
it'll be interesting here. Joey, IU plays my Notre Dame football Fighting Irish.
I thought you were a Purdue fan.
I'm a Notre Dame football
geez,
fan, and I'm a Purdue basketball fan. I didn't go to college. I went to the school of bricklaying when I got out of high school. Thank you very much. So I can pick whoever I want to root for. And I don't want any back talk, but Purdue's football team did hire UNLV's head coach to be their head coach for Purdue. Seems like they might have got a good hire there. We'll see.
Wait, really? The guy left UNLV for Purdue?
Yeah.
What is happening in this world?
Yeah.
Big Ten money, baby. Everyone's coming to the conference.
So Joey, I'm always bracing for impact with Notre Dame. They always get my hopes up. They lose to Northern Illinois early in the year, and I kind of disowned them. I'm like, I can't. Every year they lose a game like that, but then all of a sudden, they really righted the ship, and that's a credit to what they've been doing. I think from a program standpoint, you have to like what you're seeing from Notre Dame, but how do you, we'll have more time to talk about this, but what do you think with Notre Dame and Indiana? I know Gary Ross in the chat today, but I'm curious your thoughts on the game.
Yeah, I'll give you a hot 60 on it. Me and Corey just did it on the All Big Ten podcast episode that should be out tonight or tomorrow. Just kind of talking about it briefly. Like right now, first blush, like the easiest way to kind of handicap this is we were talking about the movie Donnie Brasco, and Notre Dame traditionally its legacy has been a fugazi. You know what I mean? They get to the big game and then they kind of come up short. Indiana, in the present term, as the Cinderella team this year, everyone wants to think that they're this year's Fugazi in the CFP 12. Here's what I will say. I give the edge of Curtis Rourke over Riley Leonard in terms of quarterback. When we talk defensively, I think Notre Dame is absolutely no joke. I think they're going to come. I think they're going to totally bring it. But, Corey, we were talking about it. I love Indiana's backfield, and I love Indiana's defensive line with C.J. West and Marcus Burris. I think they can slow down Notre Dame, and I think the four-quarter game plays a little bit in the favor of Indiana and Curt Cignetti. And I think this game means a ton more for Marcus Freeman right now, who all of a sudden is getting his name thrown around in NFL circles all over the place. Curt Cignetti just signed his contract in Indiana. They're playing with house money. He's already a legend there in Bloomington. It doesn't matter. So I think a lot of pressure is actually on Notre Dame in this game. I think it's close right now. I'm not going to give an official pick because we haven't done the work in the full preview, but I think it's close. Corey, I think it's closer than people think.
I think Indiana is gonna beat them. I really do, because I look at Notre Dame and they're a one-trick pony offensively. They run the football. That's all they seem to do. I'm gonna if I'm Indiana, I'm loading the box and I'm letting Riley Leonard beat me. I don't believe in him, honestly. If I'm Indiana, that's what I'm doing. I'm loading the box because they like to run the football. If you put the pressure on him, he struggled. NIU beat them. NIU has a recipe how to beat them. Right? You clog up that box, you stop that run, and you force Riley Leonard to beat you. And when it comes down to the quarterback, Curtis Rourke, I think is superior to Riley Leonard. And a lot of more people should be talking about him for the Heisman. I know he got banged up, but he had a hell of a year this year.
Yep. Adam, you're on the West Coast. You think Oregon's going to run?
Oregon.
That's how I say it. Okay.
I'm still reeling from the fact that Purdue would have more money than the Fertittas. How do you, dude, remember, back, you guys aren't old enough to remember this, but back in the day, Jerry Tarkanian, he was the head basketball coach at UNLV.
Larry Johnson, baby.
The Lakers almost hired him, and his agent ended up in the back of a car. That was the kind of thing. What happened to that UNLV? Where is, you've got that big stadium. I'm rattled by this. And mostly because when I played NCAA football as a kid, I'd always use UNLV. I'd always felt that was a sleeping giant. But I do like Oregon. I think Oregon's played well. And I know this is my hot take, and everybody in the world will disagree with me. I think playoffs are stupid. I really do. I think playoffs are the dumbest things. I love the Premier League. You play X amount of games. We know that Oregon's one of the best teams in the country. We don't need to go through this mirage other than we need to make money. We're just making money for it, which is fine. I mean, if that's, as long as we know that the true nature of playoffs and March Madness and all that stuff, it's not to determine the best team in the league, because it's not. Oregon's the best team. They've proved it. That debate is over. We now want to make a ton of money, and we want to be entertained through the month of January. We're not ready to watch. We don't have anything to do until spring training starts, which is fine. And that's what this is. But let's just come out and say, look, the Premier League doesn't, where you win the Premier League and you're this team. Okay, Man City wins the Premier League. We know that. And then they have all these other tournaments. They have the Champions League, they have the FA Cup, and they have all these other things. We need to start establishing that this playoff is completely different. This isn't Oregon should be the national champions. And then whoever wins this tournament is find a name for this tournament, and then just call it that. You're this tournament champion, because it's not fair to these kids that went out since August and proved that they're the best team. And now they've got to go through, we got to go play SMU for no reason. And that's another thing too with this garbage. God bless them we're going to let SMU and Indiana, and nope, stop it. I know that you all hate Alabama, and I understand why. Alabama is better than all those teams. They just are. They're better than Indiana. Got a chance to prove themselves against Ohio State, and they scored a touchdown, and you're oh, see, Indiana's great. And then they got blown out by soft-ass Ohio State, who the only time that Ohio State ever stands up for themselves is when a Michigan player props a flag in the middle of their field. Then all of a sudden, you become world beaters. Oh, now you want to fight. You had 60 minutes to fight. Please, God, stop Stop the insanity. I don't need to see it.
Hey, while you said that, Jalen Milroe just threw another interception, though. I will say that, though. Let's be honest here. Sometimes you got to go out there, you got to play the games.
But I think there should be college football playoffs because Oregon didn't get to play any of these teams like Texas.
They're in the Big Ten. They play everybody good.
But
they're now. We got rid of the conferences.
Isn't the whole thing to see who's the best team out of all of college football?
We watched it. I watched it over the course of 4 months.
But I'm saying,
I'm sold.
Yeah, I think they're going to win it too. But that's why you play the games any given Saturday or whenever
they played them. They played 13 of them and they won them.
But they didn't play Texas, which Joey, we were talking. I think Texas has a more talented roster than Oregon. I think it comes down to their coaching.
But the chasm between the quarterbacks is so large, and Dylan Gabriel. I mean, obviously he played so great this weekend. That's the difference right there.
Yeah. Well, my only thing is just like when you talk about the conference right now, there's two power conferences, right? Yeah. Boise State, SMU. They're in.
Do we really think that Arizona State poses a threat to win this thing? No.
Well, that's why people are going to. That's why people are going to Purdue, though, because there's going to be 4 auto bids for the Big Ten and 4 auto bids for the SEC in the next couple of years, right? And it's just going to be 2 major conferences consolidating like all the other entertainment entities that we have on the planet.
That's why the playoffs are stupid, because we had a great system in college football a couple of years ago and Corey is exactly right. Hey, Oregon didn't play Texas. Well, guess what? We're going to have Oregon play Texas. And we're going to determine it. A couple of years, remember, are you guys old enough to remember when Reggie Bush was playing at USC? Yep. And they're like, hey, we're going to have USC play Texas. Texas went out and won that game. And there's no debate. It's like, yeah, and we didn't have to sit there and suffer. Like, okay, well, this week, USC's got to go play Fresno State in the playoffs. And if Texas beats UTEP because UTEP got the automatic bid, then maybe we'll – no, the matchup that you want to see. We want to see Oregon versus Texas. They had it perfectly. Like the NFL loses its stuff too. Like we lucked out in baseball this year because we got the Yankees versus the Dodgers. It never works out that way most of the time. We're like, oh, great. We've got the Diamondbacks versus the Rangers. Like, God, stop this. I don't need it. No, we don't need to see this. We know who the best teams are. We know who it is. Can we listen, God bless Arizona State. Forks up. I love you. Can you guys play in a little mini tournament? And then for serious football, no disrespect to Clemson. We're just going to let Texas and Oregon to settle this. Have Texas and Oregon play the best 2 out of 3. I don't care. I don't need everybody else involved in this. You had the best system. And you blew it for greed and to make money because you had a committee that would be like, we've determined that, every once in a while there'd be a third team where you'd be like, of these 3 teams. And so the BCS was fine when they did the 4-team thing, but now it's too watered down. And now you can allow something fluky, and somebody gets hurt. God forbid somebody gets hurt in these playoffs. And it's like, well, this guy's not playing now because he had to go play, Missouri. Like, why? No, let's let the good teams play and cut the nonsense. It frustrates me.
I disagree. I love it because it doesn't, teams that had 1 loss in the past, they were automatically out of being the best team.
That was the beauty of it. But every game mattered. I
know, but the thing is, in the NFL, right? You have more games, so obviously you can lose more and still potentially win a Super Bowl. But in the college level, you're not giving them the same. So 1 loss, you're essentially out of it sometimes, and 2, any given team, do we not agree with that? Can beat somebody on a particular.
But that's the beauty of it is that you are rewarding the teams that are good through the entirety of the season, not allowing a 9-7 team. Oh, the 9-7 Giants make it to the Super Bowl. We don't talk about those teams.
I was going to say the Meadowlands is talking with Corey. Corey is talking from the Meadowlands right here with the undefeated Patriots. That's what's going on.
Well, it took an hour and 20 minutes for us to pull a meatball take out of Adam Rank, and we weren't leaving until we got one.
You've been eating Taco Bell tonight? What's going on, man?
First of all, I'm in California. I don't need to eat Taco Bell. There's a million places around here and by the way, if you want a QSR, quick serve restaurant, fast food, We have a place out here called Del Taco, which is like a competitor for Taco Bell. That's like a million times better. Nobody goes to the Taco Bell has cobwebs on its little intercom for the drive-through, and Del Taco's got a line around the corner because it's more superior.
Well, Bragg's first date with Jenny, he took her to Taco Bell.
That's right.
That's fine. I like that move.
That's right.
Then whenever Braggs comes to California, I'm afraid of bringing him out here because if I take him to Del Taco, it'll ruin his life because he'll realize that it's the Taco Bell is so much worse and that he'll never be able to replicate that again. It's kind of like having a perfect playoff system where you just pick the two best teams to play a game. And you're like, no, let's dilute it with 12 and have every mid-major get an opportunity to come in there. Like the whole thing with like when Boise State beat Oklahoma, that was magical. And the season just ended. Like it was great. And then the two best teams went and played. But now remember the Colt Brennan or Colt, was Colt Brennan. Yeah. When his Hawaii team went to play Georgia, that could have been a playoff game. It was unnecessary. We knew what was going on. Oh my goodness gracious.
But what about TCU? Playing
exactly. This is what happens when you let TCU in. No, that was another thing where you're like, stop. You should have been like that. Like they used to make tough decisions back in the day. Like, hey, but like Boise State has one line. Like Boise State's undefeated. You're like, that's great. USC's playing, and they're playing Texas. USC is going to play LSU. We're going to allow the big boys to fight, and then you guys can go. It's like having like when you would have a Lollapalooza. Your main eventers are going to play the main stage, and then your small band that you really love and you think is great. Well, they're playing at 3:00 on the side set. You can go watch them, but we're going to let the big boys take care of this.
Well, we've certainly gone way over here on CHGO Bears After Dark. Please hit that like button while you're hanging out. I guess while the Bears are struggling.
This is what happens when the team sucks.
Yes, well, exactly. maybe here in the next couple of weeks as the college football playoff starts to get deep into it, we can spend a whole show just talking about the college football playoff and maybe shelf the Bears conversation for a week because it certainly will be interesting to watch it play out. So please hit that like button while you're hanging out. We appreciate everybody here in the chat here tonight. Total Malarkey finishes it off with a $20 super chat saying, Woot got my point. Y'all built with the Dolphins method of over-relying on skill players. The Packers and the Lions focus on the run. Lions number 2 back has more rushing yards than Swift, who is 5th in the North. That being DeAndre Swift. O-line wins playoff games. 2, Alex Ammerling with a $2 super chat saying, sell the team, George.
All right.
Maybe one day that might happen, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. Bear Truth 9, my guy, saying Edge, Abdul Carter, defensive tackle, Mason Graham, and Derek Harmon for defensive line. Some guys to look at as we get into draft coverage here down the road. Guy Finley has been my, speech helper here with with my problems pronouncing words here tonight. I said Oregon. I say Oregon, and everybody makes fun of me for that. But yes, I am going to see if Jenny will help bring us a dog. He's also been giving me advice on how to bring a dog into this house. That I haven't had a dog in this house for like 3 years. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how everything else goes with the Chicago Bears. Joey, appreciate all your hard work as always. Shout out to you, Adam Rank and Corey Wootton, for all of your insights as always on an extended CHGO Bears After Dark. We appreciate everybody once again tuning in. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and that wraps things up for tonight. Enjoy the second half of the Bengals and Cowboys as we keep an eye on that tankathon. Go Bengals. But other than that, tomorrow, CHGO Bears will be back at 1 p.m. Central. While this show is going on, I might have booked ourselves a pretty good guest. I won't drop his name here quite yet, but one of the top NFL insiders in the game might be joining CHGO.
Ian Rappaport?
At 1 p.m. No, Ian, Ian's on the brick list, as we call it, Adam. He always big times me, when we're at Super Bowl Radio Row, I'm I have the gift of gab, and I can get I pride myself on being able to get anybody on our show.
Right.
I walk right up to Rich Eisen or Tom Pelissero or anybody down the block. I don't care who you are. But Ian Rappaport is the guy that I haven't been able to get. And I don't know, I don't like getting the cold shoulder. You don't big time brags.
No,
He's on the brick list, but maybe I'll name drop Adam Rank this year on Radio Row in at the Super Bowl in New Orleans. But other than that, that wraps things up for tonight. Once again, thank you to everybody that tuned in. Thank you to you guys here on the panel. Bears fans, hopefully better days are ahead, but keep your head up and always bear down.
We all silly like the mayor.